You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. Roki Sasaki. That is a name that I didn't think I would be talking about on this program. I still don't know why I'm talking about it. I don't even know if it's real, right? Like,
it doesn't feel real.
It doesn't feel like a real thing. That's why, and I don't really believe it. Like, look, there's Twitter accounts that will send out things, and sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong. MLB Scoops, which sometimes just seems to be full of it. I don't know if I buy it, but it's like one of those things you start seeing early on. An account like this will put out something like a list of teams that a player is interested in or has a short list. And this pitcher, who's very young and very talented, coming out of Japan, his list of teams supposedly is the Dodgers, the Padres, the Mets, the Yankees, all that makes sense, and the White Sox. And remember, this is the guy that Chris Getz said, we're going to put a package together for him, and everybody laughed about it, right? And then there were reports that he enjoyed it, and that he's got links to Tadahito Iguchi because that's his manager.
Well, that's true. That is true.
Right? And it's like everybody keeps trying to say like the dark horse in getting this guy who could be a phenom, who's young and you would have lots of control over, and you'd be using, if I'm not mistaken, international signing money. Like, he's not going to be a lot of money. That's why the White Sox can afford him. It's not like the White Sox are going out and spending $20 million a year to bring him in.
No, he's capped at $7.5 million.
Right.
Annual value right now.
And you have to understand that you've changed everything with your international scouting, and he may want something that has to do with comfort. Like, he may have his manager telling him, this is a family organization, they're going to take care of you, I was only there for a couple of years, this is how they treated me.
It's not Jerry. It's not Jerry. What it is the city of Chicago, specifically the suburbs, and actually it's Arlington Heights where the Bears are looking to build, has a very thriving Japanese community that is very close to what you find in Japan. That's why Tadahito Iguchi was interested in signing here. That's why the Cubs have been successful in signing a few Japanese players, because there is touches of home for them that you may not find in New York, where, I mean, there's probably something there, but that's what I've understood over the years, is that it's the city. It has nothing to do with Jerry Reinsdorf. If the Cubs show interest in him and want to sign him, and it comes down to the Cubs and the White Sox because he wants to be in Chicago, I don't think there's any way he's coming to the South Side.
Right. It would make more sense for him to go north.
Right.
Like, weird things happen. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but weird things happen. Jose Abreu was a very sought-after free agent. And
right.
And remember, there was this Cuban connection at the time where I want to say Alexei Ramirez was like somebody that he idolized. And remember, Ramirez was a big fan of El Duque. Like, I mean, like, I don't know if I have the lineage correct, but like every time.
And it was the work the White Sox had done getting Jose Contreras' family.
Right.
Over.
Exactly. There's like these little things that matter. And you go, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't he go to a contender? And then you also wonder whether or not a guy that's that young, who knows that it's capped, right? Like the money's, he can only get so much money. So right. He's going to get another contract afterwards. And he knows that's where he's going to make bank. And you watch foreign players come over sometimes and they're superstars. Like, you look at this guy's stats, he's got a 0.883 whip in Japanese baseball. So he keeps guys off base. He's got otherworldly type numbers that are there. He's only 22. Is that what he is right now? 23. And in just 23. A couple of days. He had a birthday in November. He's 23 years old. And he knows if he does well, he's going to be in Major League Baseball for a while, and he's going to make his money on the next contract. So it's not about money. I don't know if it's as much about winning, right? If you plan on being there for a long time, it might be about comfort. There's not a lot of pressure on the White Sox to win.
And there's a guaranteed rotation spot on the White Sox, too.
Guaranteed rotation spot. Nobody's going to mess with you and say, we're going to start him out in the bullpen. Nobody's going to move him. They're going to be very patient with him. They're going to work with him. Brian Bannister, again, with his published works, has a reputation for working very well with pitchers. This is a good place to come over and get used to American baseball because there is a difference. There is a jump coming into Major League Baseball from any league that's out there. And there are an awful lot of Japanese pitchers that have come over and not succeeded, especially out of the gate, who got better later on. Do you want the pressure of being in New York or LA, or do you want to go someplace with a guaranteed spot with a guy who's really good at developing pitchers? And let's not forget that the White Sox, even though it has not translated, continue to speak the game, that it's all about playing defense and helping their pitchers out. And this would be, if you were sitting there saying money's going to be the same and I'm not concerned about winning right away because I'm not a 30-year-old pitcher that's coming over. Like, I know Sox fans find it far-fetched. And trust me, when I tweeted that out, when I retweeted that thing from the MLB Scoops thing, look, I take them with a grain of salt. But you have heard a little bit of buzz, and everybody keeps going like, there's no way it would be the White Sox. And you sit there and you say, well, stranger things have happened. And this would be one of those moves that you would have to throw platitudes at Chris Getz for getting this guy if they were able to do it. And this would be one of those things that you'd sit there and say, oh, wow, look at what they're doing here and how this could build for the future. And so I don't believe it. I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think it's impossible like a lot of White Sox fans do. I don't think it's impossible they end up with Roki Sasaki. Now, that said, Roki Sasaki is probably going to go play for like the Padres or the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees before he goes to the White Sox. But it's possible, Ed.
Yeah, and actually, of those, I think the main contender is probably the Padres. They have room in their rotation. It's a West Coast team. Again, there's some pressure to win there, but not a ton of pressure to win there. And there's a lot of things that line up for him that we just talked about in terms of having the opportunity. It would be it's a cavernous ballpark that they have there. There's a lot of margin for error. You've seen a lot of pitchers go from other organizations to the Padres and have a level of success, especially at home with them, because that park plays so big. And they do have good defensive players behind him too at that point. So there's a lot to like about going to San Diego. And San Diego is probably also a team that if you like it there, well, you have an opportunity to stick around there because they at some point will open the pocketbooks. But I would honestly, for a guy like Roki Sasaki, I would be a little shocked if he went to the Yankees because I don't think the Yankees guarantee him a spot in the rotation.
I don't think the Dodgers do either. I mean, they might.
The Dodgers definitely don't. And no. I don't think the Mariners I heard were another option, and they're pretty loaded at pitching. And
you go to a team that's trying to win now, you have a short leash as that pitcher. He has to understand that.
The Mets, I don't know. I mean, you look at Kodai Senga, who was, their big Japanese pickup. Now, granted, he had some injury issues, but it's not like it was instant success for him in New York either. So that sometimes I wonder if word like that gets around, like, don't go to that market.
They're going to be hard on you. Right. That's the thing. And the idea might be, look, there's not an environment of stress and pressure here. And again, if that's the pitch, like you have to think about what the pitch was, because the Sox said, we're going to make our pitch like everybody else. Brian Bannister and his philosophy and his track record are part of that pitch. The lack of pressure is part of that pitch. Iguchi telling him what he feels about the city, why he should be there is part of that pitch. All the things you went through about culture and the ability to kind of have a little piece of home in the Chicago area is part of that pitch.
For a 23-year-old, that's a big deal. I mean, think about when you're 23. And you and I experienced this because in our early 20s, we were traveling. We went from being in college to going to towns to work that we had. I mean, you worked in Wheeling, West Virginia. You probably hadn't even heard of Wheeling, West Virginia before you went there, right?
And I went to Wheeling, West Virginia because I had a professional relationship with somebody else who I had met at my first radio station, who was the president of programming for the company that owned that radio station. Right. And I felt protected just a little bit. When I went for my interview, this is a great example, Ed. You're right about this. I'm young. I'm going and trying something that's very new. I know I want to travel. I don't want to be in Chicago. I mean, God, you see what happened with the CHGO thing. It's just as bad as radio, right? I didn't want to be in Chicago radio. Didn't want to do it. I was like,
ruthless.
Right. I'm going to make my own way. That was what my plan was. So I was interviewing in all these different places. And to be honest with you, there really wasn't a difference in pitch or money with any of them. They were all basically at about the same salary. They all basically had the same pitch. They all told me I was wonderful. They all said, oh, you're going to be a star. They all talked about how their radio station was going to be built around me because I was the morning guy. They all made their pitches. They all flew me out to all the different locations around the country. They all spent the weekend buying me steak dinners. I mean, one of them took me to Hooters because they figured he's 20-some years old. We'll just show him the girls at Hooters. And like, I don't know why that was what they wanted, but they felt like that was what was going to get me. I had one take me one time to the beach. I was like, why am I here? Look at these girls. I'm like, okay, there's girls everywhere. But I mean, like, everybody makes their pitch, right?
Every Hooters manages to staff themselves
Right, exactly.
decently.
Everybody makes their pitch. But I took the job I took because that pitch involved the person who I knew and at least had some familiarity with, who was like, Chris, you can trust these people.
Yeah, and I went through the same thing because my early gigs were based around. I mean, there was conversation of me joining you at some points, and you
were like, I don't trust him. I don't trust him at all.
Yeah, I don't trust him. So we had another friend of ours who managed to get me a job in Rochester, New York, and I went out there because again, there was a little bit of like, all right, this seems like a safe position. And at the time, I turned down something in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I didn't know anybody, but right. I had an opportunity. The money was the same. It was the same travel to a place I didn't know. It's just that in one spot I had a friend, all right, and I had somebody who was helping to build my reputation before I walked in the door, and there was something to be said about that.
Yeah, comfort makes a difference. Comfort definitely makes a difference. Roki Sasaki, not impossible for the White Sox. Sox in the Basement listeners, for exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. With no high-pressure sales, you don't have them in your house tracking in snow and mud and water. No, you go track that into their showroom, where they keep the showroom clean. Don't worry, they're wiping it up. But you're seeing everything in full color. You got an owner in showroom. You got every possibility right there for you to touch and see. When you get the install, it's all Window and Door Superstore installers, and there's also an owner on site. They do not farm out their work. They've been doing it this way for over 40 years in Oak Forest since 1985, with all major brands custom made and no stock items for a perfect fit. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest is a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. Did you see the White Sox social media, which came to life towards the end of the year? I think they've got somebody else running it, or they were going in a very different direction.
Well, yeah, somebody's trying hard.
Right. They're getting interesting. I love this Gus Varland video that came out. Now, Gus Varland is a pitcher, but the best part about the video is they took a tweet from White Sox social media, from like the fans, right? They take a tweet that's critical of them. And this is a team that hides. They hide from the podcast. They hide from the blogs. They're always hiding. They don't like to acknowledge that we exist, even though we've got all these people that listen to what we're doing or read our stuff.
We're definitely part of the community.
Right.
We're part of the fandom.
And they don't want to interact with us. They have people always ask me, like, well, what's it like? Are you able to get guests? And I said, well, anytime we've gotten a player, I've had to go through their agent. Because even though the team says that they won't block anything, they won't help. And I do kind of feel like they block it.
Shouldn't go unnoticed that the players that we've gotten happened during the lockout.
Yeah, that is true. And then when Jake Burger came out a second time, they traded him. I mean, it is possible.
Yeah.
Okay. But the thing is, they don't interact with these entities that they should be interacting with. And they interact in this video, which is really funny. They interact in this video by having Gus Varland, like they show the tweet, and it says, who is this guy? And then he starts going through his whole, like Gus Varland pulls back his phone. It's very well produced. And he introduces himself.
Yeah.
Like, it's the funniest little clip. And I'm like, this is the stuff I've been waiting for. Like, this is the stuff you have been complaining about for years on this podcast. Why don't I know anything about your players, and why do you hide them all? And it is just...
I love the fact that I know something about Gus Varland, or I feel like I know something about Gus Varland.
Right.
I don't know if Gus Varland's going to be on the team this year.
Right, but I'm a big Gus Varland guy now after this video.
I'm a Gus Varland dude now. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is... You want us to buy Sox Fest tickets, right? You
Right.
want us to
Is he there?
show up at the stadium.
Is he there? Is Gus going to be there?
You know, I don't know. Now that
He might be the big
I'm
ticket.
saying that out loud, they did announce who's coming, and I didn't see if Gus Varland was among them, but he should be. But here's the thing: like, I can root for players based on stats. I can root for players based on on-field performance, or I can root for players because I genuinely like them. Right? I'm interested in them. Why were we such huge Jake Berger fans? Because we got to know him a little bit because he came on our show.
His wife came on the show. And remember, that was because of them. She's the one who explained that they wanted to embrace social media. And it was really kind of to get him out there. They were almost doing it because the White Sox weren't doing it. Like, she was doing it. She was like, man, why are they not featuring any of their players and letting people get to know them? I'm going to do this. That was what she did. Then he was traded.
And then he was traded to Miami, where, by the way, he's very popular.
By the way, Gus Varland, not on the list right now for the
Not on the
Sox
list.
Fest Live.
Gus Varland needs to be on the list,
I mean,
guys.
he right now is the biggest ticket item in my mind to go stand in a theater, which, by the way, still not sold out. Amazing.
But yeah. Well, that's because Gus Varland isn't there, I think.
Right. You got to get Gus involved. You got to get him there is what you got to do, because I've learned more about him from that video that is up on White Sox social media than most of the players on their team that have been there for years. And I loved it. Like, keep that up. More of that, please. Start interacting with your fan base and start showing us some fun things, and start instead of just constantly after you lose going, well, we'll get them tomorrow. And like that's the worst social media. Don't push the things out that aggravate people. Instead, find some fun, some levity. Know what you are and lean into it.
And there's two. So, I mean, honestly, if Andrew Vaughn's got a tight 5 minutes that he can do on an open mic night, like, throw it out on social media. It'd be great. Okay. Even if it's corny, I'm fine with it.
But
also stop living in 2005.
You think Andrew Vaughn could put together 5 minutes on an open mic?
Do you know any different?
I don't know. I've kind of looked
You
at
don't
Andrew
know.
Vaughn.
That's
I see
the
those
problem. You
wild
don't know.
eyes, and I just don't see him as being able to deliver 5 minutes of comedy. And maybe that's me.
But I don't know, and that's my point. But also, stop living in 2005. Stop living in the Ozzie Guillen era when we had a manager who was the face of the team, and the guy that took the bullets in the media and came out and said all the things that needed to be said, because we still did know something about Paul Konerko. We still did have AJ Pierzynski, who was a big personality. We still make fun of Carl Everett, and the dinosaur thing. There was personality on that team that went beyond Hawk Harrelson and Ozzie Guillen. And they've lost that over the years, where, like, I think they expected us to fall in love with Pedro Grifol.
Oh my gosh, what a mistake that was.
A huge mistake. And I'm not entirely sure we're going to fall in love with Will Venable. It would be great if he's got a personality, but the guys I want to root for, I want to root for Gus Varland because I feel like I know a little bit of something about Gus Varland. I want to root for players on the field that I feel like I have some sort of connection to, that I understand their personality, who they are, what they are. Okay. It doesn't really matter. I mean, there's no pressure on this team to win a world championship this year because it's impossible unless Jerry just decides he's going to throw $1 billion at the payroll.
Don't even say that. It's not happening. Okay.
They're not. There's just no way.
Have some fun. Have some fun
at
with
this
what
point.
you are.
Juan Soto's off the market. A lot of good talent free agents are off the market. But here's the thing. I'm not disturbed by the idea of them, for example, picking up Andre Lipschitz, a former Tigers prospect who actually hit well in the Dodgers organization last year, has no room in the Dodgers organization for him this year. So you bring him in, you give him an invite. Cool. I saw that kind of lambasted in a few spots on social media, like, oh, thanks for bringing us this guy. Well, what's wrong with bringing us this guy? Okay. If I know something about him, I may root for him. I may be, let's go. Let's see if this guy's any good to match with the fact that I kind of like the guy as a person. I don't know if that's going to happen. But the only thing I don't want to do is the only rumors, honestly, that I'm down on are when I hear something like Michael Lorenzen. I was reading this in Sports Illustrated. Michael Lorenzen wants to be a two-way player again. He wants to go somewhere where he can get enough at bats to be considered a two-way player and be a Shohei Ohtani type.
Right, and he's looking at teams that suck. Right,
like
he's
Miami
looking
and
at
the White Sox are the two teams that were named.
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, what his agent is saying is, you can have Michael Lorenzen and he can pitch for your team, and we'll give you a good deal on him because you're bottom feeders that don't want to spend any money, but
he's got to be an outfielder for you. He's got to be a DH for you.
Right. We want you to play him in the field. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm all for trying new things, but I don't see how bringing in Michael Lorenzen to pitch for you when he's not going to be a long-term solution, because I guarantee that contract is short-term and it's done in a way where he gets to be a two-way player and then go out and try to make bigger money with an organization that will spend on him.
Well, have him in your starting lineup every day of the week, one day to pitch, and then the rest of the time he's in the field, so that you can trade him honestly, I think what it was is trade him at the deadline to a contender that wants that 14th pitcher /
But do you want to waste at bats when you're trying to build a team?
No.
No. You don't want that. I don't want them to do that.
Even if he's got a good 5 minutes of stand-up comedy, I don't want Michael Lorenzen for those purposes.
That music can only mean one thing. The Sox nerd Dave Marin is ready to give us tidbits and trivia nuggets that he would normally put up at the rate. But he's with us each and every weekend here on Sox in the Basement, brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore. Look forward to the brand new Lamont Unlocked podcast coming from the Broadcast Basement On Demand Radio Network in January of 25. And if you're looking for a little holiday magic, go and enjoy that town. Go out, have something to eat, something to drink, and then take your significant other, the kids, whatever, up and down the canal. They have a little walk with all these lit up delights. It is a very festive place to go, and definitely should be on your list here for the holidays. See everything they have going on at LamontDowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got for me?
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Chris, let's reprise our look at the White Sox and Christmas, shall we? A White Sox trade is mentioned in the iconic 1983 movie A Christmas Story, which is set basically in Hammond, Indiana, in the heart of White Sox country. This should come as no surprise because Gene Shepard, the creator of A Christmas Story, was a Sox fan. In fact, he was such a huge fan, he narrated the franchise's first historical video, Chicago White Sox: A Visual History, in 1987. Part of the video featured Shepard decked out in a Sox cap and Sox starter jacket at second base at Comiskey Park, flowing about Nellie Fox, his all-time favorite player. Fox, believe it or not, was born on Christmas Day 1927. In the movie, the Sox make a cameo when the dad, played by Darren McGavin, muttered while reading the newspaper that the team had traded Bullfrog. Bullfrog was the nickname of one-time White Sox pitcher Bill Dietrich. The bespectacled righty was the poster boy for the Sox of the Christmas Story era, which was the mediocre and sometimes dreary 1930s and 40s. A modern-day comp for old Bullfrog? How about Gavin Floyd or John Danks? Dietrich was 80-91 with a 4.23 ERA in 366 games for the Sox from 1936 to 1946. The highlight of Dietrich's Sox life, other than the movie mention, came on June 1st, 1937, when he no-hit the Browns in the Sox 8-0 win before an estimated crowd of 1,500 at Comiskey Park. Dietrich walked 2 and struck out 5 in the 10th no-no in club history. This was Philip Umber level of a surprising no-hitter. In addition to being, quote, just a guy, 2 days prior to this gem, Dietrich was pummeled for 10 runs on 9 hits and 3 1/3 innings in losing the nightcap of a doubleheader in Cleveland. All that is true. What isn't true was the trade the dad mentioned in the Christmas Story. Shepard and the movie took a little poetic license because Dietrich was never traded by the Sox. He was claimed off waivers from Washington on July 20th, 1936, and released by the Sox on September 18th, 1946. As for Four Eyes Schottenhofer, the other Sox player the dad mentioned, he doesn't exist. There is no player in big league history, or minor league history for that matter, with that name. There is an entry for this player on the Baseball Reference bio page, but it is only to tell us that old Four Eyes is a product of Shepard's vivid imagination. Before I get to my zinger, I remind you that gems like these and long-form pieces are on my blog, which you can link at soxinthebasement.com. How about a few Christmas zingers? In addition to Fox, those with Sox ties born on Christmas Day are Tom O'Malley, one-time third base coach Wallace Johnson, Jack Hamilton, Gene Lamont, and Ben Chapman. The only player in Major League history with the last name Christmas played 12 of his 24 big league games with the 1984 White Sox. Catcher Steve Christmas hit .364 with a double, a clutch homer, and 4 RBIs in his time with the White Sox. The Sox' first Christmas Day transaction came in 1984 when they signed free agent outfielder Mark Gilbert. Gilbert went on to bigger and better things, later serving as the U.S. ambassador to New Zealand. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about Bullfrog, Four Eyes, Christmas, and New Zealand. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Quick programming note for everybody. Sox in the Basement will be back in 1 week with a brand new show, unless something exciting happens that we need to cover on Christmas or Christmas Eve. Otherwise, we'd be doing a show on a holiday that most of you are not going to want to pay attention to White Sox baseball. So we're going to take one show off to enjoy Christmas Eve, Christmas Day with the family, and be back in 1 week with a new episode. Now watch this team force me to do something on the holiday, which would probably be a good thing. Meanwhile, I'm looking up our new friend, my guy Gus Varland, and he is not on the list for Sox Fest yet, which seems to be a mistake.
Right.
But at the whatever they're calling, I mean, they keep calling it Sox Fest, but it's just something else. January 24th and 25th for 4 hours each time, 5 to 9 p.m. That's it. Okay. It is interesting to look at the list. Because I think
it's a survey class from a community college is what they're throwing, really.
The initial list tells you a lot. First of all, 3 of the 4 guys acquired in the Crochet deal are going to be there. They list prospects. They list 8 of them coming. And Braden Montgomery's coming. And Kyle Teel is coming. And Chase Meadroth is coming. Again, He's not on the 40-man roster. This guy could be your starting second baseman. He's definitely a piece that they're excited about because they're bringing him. Colson Montgomery's going to be there. Edgar Carroll's going to be there. 2 guys I think you're going to see this year. Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith are going to be there. 2 guys you're going to see this year. And then at the bottom of it, they go with George Wolkow, who is not coming this year.
No, but he's a local kid,
He's
right?
the local kid with the buzz. And that's why they've got him on that list, okay? But the other prospects, everybody else on that list, easily, not Montgomery. Montgomery, though, is one of the big gets. So outside of Montgomery and Wolkow, Meadroth, Colson Montgomery, not Braden Montgomery, Colson Montgomery, Edgar Carroll, Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, Kyle Teel. You might see them all at some point this coming year.
Very easily. You could very easily see all those guys on the team.
You already feel that, and I think that that's being confirmed by seeing them sitting there on that prospect list. Those are the prospects that'll be at the Sox Fest. The players that they have so far, also interesting to me, because I don't know if all these guys make it through the year, but you're trying to feature them, and I find that weird. I think Sean Burke is going to be one of your starting 5 along with Jonathan Cannon.
But there's no guarantee that those guys last the entire year in the rotation because they're not proven.
Well, I think Drew Thorpe is going to be in there the entire year. But, I mean, those are your 3 pitchers that are going to be there.
I think that's 3/5 of your starting rotation to start the year right now.
Right. And Corey Lee is somebody that fans enjoyed last year.
And right now he's your presumptive starting catcher.
Right.
I with all due deference to Edgar Carroll and Matt Thaiss, Corey Lee's behind the plate every day.
And they're always pushing Andrew Vaughn. So, of course, the replacement level player that they're giving $6 million to an arbitration will be there.
I'm telling you, he might be sneaky funny. He maybe he does ventriloquism.
He'll be doing 5 minutes on an open mic.
He's got a little Andrew Vaughn. He's got little Andy that he sits on his lap. And
I can't even imagine what his act would be. I think you're barking up the wrong tree on that one. And then Brian Ramos and Miguel Vargas are going to be there. And I think that's really interesting that Ramos and Vargas are going to be there along with Vaughn. I don't think all 3 of those guys are starting on this team this year. We talked about position battles on the last show, and I don't see how the 3 of them are all regular everyday players. I think that Vargas could be the first baseman as much as Vaughn could be the first baseman. Ramos, we're not even sure if he's going to be the third baseman, and if he is, where does Vargas go? It's interesting to see those 3 names because I look at the prospect list and I go, well, this makes perfect sense. These are all the big prospects. These are the names they want you to see, and we might see the majority of them up this year. I look at the player list and I go, there's a lot of players missing. And I don't know if everybody on this list is here at the All-Star break.
Really, honestly, as I'm looking at that, I would figure Sean Burke, Jonathan Cannon, and Drew Thorpe to be parts of the team all year. I think Corey Lee, of the position players that are there, is the only guy that you would expect to be part of the White Sox now and potentially in the future. And I'm not entirely certain that he's going to always be the starting catcher, but I think Corey Lee sticks around for a while. The rest of them, I mean, Ramos, they seemed like they weren't sold on Brian Ramos last year. Miguel Vargas, that fascinates me to no end, like you said, because why are you're really just trying to make up for the trade at that point by showing that Miguel Vargas is an important part of the team in spite of his struggles on the field. And Andrew Vaughn just continues to be a guy that they cling to. And so, again, unless it's the prop comedy or, something that he's got on the team, I don't know why you push him.
Socks in the basement. Socks in the basement. Socks in the basement.
Socks in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always on socksinthebasement.com.